Welcome, everybody. This week's lesson is on fables and fairy tales, um, better known as stories with morals. People usually utilize morals as a comic comedic departure in the terms of comics. So, a fable is a succinct fictional story in prose or in verse that features animals or legendary creatures, plants, or other inanimate objects which are speaking or telling some sort of story. A fairy tale is a type of short story that typically features folkloric fantasy creatures such as dwarves, dragons, elves, fairies, giants, gnomes, goblins, griffins, mermaids, talking animals, trolls, unicorns, or witches, and usually magic or enchantments. Think J.R.R. Tolkien or maybe Harry Potter. So we have we have an illustration in particular, and also in comics and graphic novels, this propensity towards using imagery uh, from these fables, from fairy tales, to tell comics, to tell stories, because people already know these stories. So you can put your own spin on it and kind of make it mean whatever you want it to mean. So here we have The Lion and the Mouse, which feels a little bit darker and a little bit more serious, maybe, than this more cartoony Lion and the Mouse. But this one's not super cartoony. It's not in color. It's in black and white, which always makes things feel just a little bit more somber. It has some really tight hatching, so you know, it's still kind of in the serious vein, just a looser form of drawing. Then we get to this one here. It's in color. The lion is kind of comically angry about being tied up. It doesn't look like ferocious by any means. It mostly looks like a big angry cat. Here we have another version of the lion, and this lion looks kind of pretty content, honestly. This is just a happy big cat with sort of some like early Leonardo DiCaprio locks. Here we have a more tortured looking lion. It's a print, and it's because of the high contrast in darks and lights. You know, it feels just a little bit moodier. And for this piece, this one has some high contrast, but we kind of have a gentle feel with the first and the last panels, but the middle panels feel like there's something serious going on, particularly that third panel. Here we have some more folk artish. It looks not quite as mechanically sound in drawing, and that really changes the feel of the drawings as well. Feels a little bit more childish, a little bit more naive. It gives a different flavor to that story. This one really pushes it beyond that. It's kind of like childish with the intent of being sort of a joke. You know, the style itself is kind of a joke. You know, it's a little bit crude. It's a little bit rough. You know, maybe the styles that might speak to this are like doodles that you might find on like a bathroom stall, or like some graffiti on the street or something. Maybe something that you'd scrawl in a notebook while listening to a really boring math teacher, or a really great math teacher that you're just not into. Um, then we get this more refined sort of feel. You know, this particular one feels just kind of laid back and loose, and it kind of gives that quietude that you might get from one of the alternative grade schools sort of teachings. You know, teachings more about simplicity than it does about being a busy, crazy world. But then we can see how these illustrations can be used to sort of tell other stories. So here's a political cartoon using the lion and the mouse as sort of a starting point. So we know the story of the Lion and the Mouse. So now when we take political figures and we put it into this illustration, suddenly it means something entirely different, right? Okay, so here's another relatively serious looking illustration with a different fairy tale at this point. Um, and you can really feel the moodiness of it. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of, have any of you seen like Fievel, the American Tale? You know, there's like a dark, somber quality to that. And as much as it's like made for children, it's also made for adults. So maybe this would be something that you'd see in like a fancier book of fairy tales, or maybe you would see it in kind of a more serious take with a graphic novel or something. Like it kind of has that same sort of vibe, almost as Mouse, but it's drawn a little bit better even than the Art Spiegelman illustrations. So here, this one is a woodcut, and it's kind of this parallel wherein, you know, there's similar fairy tales, there's similar fables across cultures, right? So this one is from an Eastern culture. You can see the signature in the lower right, and the line style really feels, the line and the shading style both feel akin to that more Eastern printmaking style. Everything's kind of a little bit more airy. You know, it definitely has a different feel than this more moody piece. It's still serious, but it gives you a little bit more room to feel the mood on your own. You know, it's not dictated for you. Here, this one's a bit more cartoony. This has got kind of a good little gag with the mice and the togas. Gotta love it. Okay, so the ant and the grasshopper. This is a really, really graphic approach to a fable. And it comes across quite well. I love the illustrations of the ant and the grasshopper in particular. But the ant has so much more emotion, it feels like, than maybe that grasshopper does. You just really can feel it working in every shot that you see it. Here we have another fable with a fox in it. I believe this is the fox that lost its tail. It feels, again, this one feels a little bit serious, but because of the high contrast. However, it's got kind of a naive feel to the actual illustrations. Here's another semi-serious looking one. But the text is not on the same level of seriousness as the actual illustration, which is another tool that we can use in our toolkits. You know, we can kind of set up this sort of serious tale, but then say something really goofy along with it, and that can be a gag unto itself. So here we have the fox and the crow. And the fox ends up going in this hole. And this isn't a much looser style, but it still tells the story. I think the things that I like the best about this is the contrast in really full picture plane versus really empty. We have a lot of negative space in those two illustrations that are the second in either line. And they really kind of help to vary the flow of this comic. Really it feels really great. Then we get kind of more of a designy feel. So kind of reducing the fable just to these two silhouettes with the nice typeface. And this one looks like an Arthur Rackham. I'm not actually sure of who did it, but it feels like Arthur Rackham's illustrations. Again, it feels a little bit more serious. We have a little bit more contrast with some serious line details in there. Definitely a different flavor than the more graphic approach. Kind of along the same lines. Then we add the cartoony color into it, and it seems like it's a little bit more made for kids. You know, it's got that eye-popping red on the very green grass. You know, it's very much playing into the compliments. It feels feels again really graphic, but it feels very childlike. But then we get to another one of these sort of naive to the point of going over the top of naive. Um, it looks like a folk art piece. Is this really made for kids to think it's funny, or is it made for adults to think it's funny? Like we're kind of using children's drawings as a trope in a way, to tell a better gag. Okay, this one just it has an odd flow to it. It's always rough to see the the panels that are all the same size. The only thing that really kind of makes this one work is the repeating pieces. We have all the rocks laid out next to each other. We have kind of the silhouettes of the birds sort of drawn in the same sort of progressive rhythm. It works. So other places where we might see fables or things riffing off of fables, some famous literature kind of created their own interpretations. So here we have one of the rabbits from Alice in Wonderland, um, the mock turtle. All these characters in Alice in Wonderland. They're speaking animals. They kind of, and the cool thing about that is that we have sort of this personality that we associate with those animals to begin with. So then, if we step back, if we think about them just a little bit more, either we can build upon what is like the stereotypical cat in like terms of the Cheshire cat. Like the Cheshire cat is like so like sly that it just disappears. Like we know that cat. That's a real cat. Like some cats just disappear. Some cats like fall over their butts and roll around the corner, but not the Cheshire cat type cat. So here we have another scene from Alice in Wonderland with the with the with the rabbit sitting down for tea and the Mad Hatter, and he looks funky in these illustrations, and I love it. All right. So another place that we see it is in Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book, which is the Jungle Book, and Just So stories were really retellings of famous fables, famous fairy tales. So it's not like he was coming up with the stories on his own, but he did have a more serious flavor to them when he was writing them. He kind of was writing them as a I don't know, in much the same way that anybody writing in the 19th century, if they were writing for kids, it was almost as if they were writing for adults. That's just convoluted wording and whatnot. So this illustration just has many layers of complication to it. Like it could basically be done above that line and the pattern in the bottom, but we have this allusion to Noah's Ark in the bottom, which kind of works actually. Here you get a little bit more serious of an intake of it, with Bagheera and Baloo. And here we get even more serious renditions of the cats. We also see the same sort of relationships in George Orwell's Animal Farm. And he's really using these different creatures to kind of set up this political thing, and it really works. So he's using these personalities of the animals to tell his story a little bit more. The pig Gestapo, man, that's where it's at. But it's been drawn in a bunch of different ways, just like a lot of the fairy tales have been. Because it's such an interesting story, and how do you want to draw your barnyard animals? I mean, you can draw them so many different ways. Like here we have them all drawn kind of like gangsters. Here they look very much like something out of The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. Here it becomes all about this text. That the pig looks like it could be any old pig, but we start to look at the at the text, and suddenly it becomes animated in and of itself, right? So we get the personality based on the design and less upon the illustration per se. Now we see all different types of renditions of animals chatting in comics. It's kind of an easy way to set up a character that isn't going to offend anyone, hopefully. So if you think of the like wolf that's standing on the corner and is staring at the woman walking down the street, and his jaw hits the ground, like that's kind of, it's not as offensive, I guess, if it's a wolf. Um, Although I think maybe the flavor of the 1960s being very different than the 2020s, but uh, we'll let it sit for now. Um, Here's a more modern take on the dog and the shellfish. This kind of has sort of that post Disney and manga kind of coming to America sort of feel to it, and a really beautiful design in the text at the top. Here's a little more naive looking drawing of contemporary story with a panda bear in it. And we're using kind of the cuteness of the panda to like say really gnarly things. Gnarly as in gross and vile, not as in cool in the 80s. Here we have the town mouse and the country mouse. So almost any illustrations with mice in them in comics kind of make me think of Chris Ware and Quimby the mouse. This is a different mouse, but it's just interesting to see animals drawn in their like business suits and whatnot. Kind of like whenever you see an illustrated copy of The Wind in the Willows with a frog wearing his three-piece suits and whatnot. In the world of comics, we have Roman Dirge. He was a contemporary of the maker of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Invader Zim. There was a few artists working in California at that time that were kind of gaining this notoriety from these like really childish looking macabre drawings. So they're kind of taking these really macabre stories and giving the drawings this like really cute sort of feel. So you end up with these contrasting ideas of, like dirty, grimy horror with cute and sweet. It's kind of like the Christina Ricci as Wednesday Addams sort of take. But they're using that as their kind of humor device. And so here's Roman Dirge's take on Little Miss Muffet and the spider, which she wallops with a frying pan. And here we have another one of the illustrations of Lenore, the little dead girl. We see animal illustrations in bigger comics as well. Here's Rocket Raccoon, very much in the world's consciousness after the MCU movies came out. Here's the first edition of the Ninja Turtles, a story entirely based on mutant turtles. So there, and again, we have animals leading the parade. And then Princess Mononoke, where all of the animals are speaking and talking to one another, and the spirits of them are controlling the planet and whatnot. You probably know it better than I do, but it's just a common plot device. So, for the homework for this one, I'd like you to create a 2-page comic rendition of a classic fable or fairy tale. Be mindful of communicating the general flow of the storyline and a moral at the end. You are welcome to flip the fairy tale on its head and create a more modern take on the plot or a satire of the original. And you're also to continue your work on your 12-page comic. Disregard the dates, and if the text doesn't match what I said. I'm using an old slide, so I apologize for that. All right. Take care, folks, and I'll talk to you soon.